everybody. Welcome back to the NFL Flex Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your boy, Big Mike, and we're back with our Week 11 recap. So let's get things started. Hopefully you guys had a great week. I won in both of my leagues. I'm in first in my main league. I'm in a tie for fourth at 7-3 in my other league, or 7-4 in my other league. And so let's just go game by game. I'm going to talk through what happened, tell you guys what I hit on, what I was right about, what I missed on, and then we'll wrap up the session with some waiver and streamer picks. Also, check out my Instagram at NFL.flex to get that official list. And please give me a subscribe here if you like my content. All right, so let's start it off with New Orleans at Philadelphia. So this was one game we'll start out that I was wrong about. I thought this would be a bit more of a lower scoring, grinded out game. It turned out to be kind of a blowout. Philly just smoked New Orleans, and New Orleans kind of caught up and gained some ground in garbage time, but it was really too little too late. Jalen Hurts balled out. I think I have to maybe start changing my mind about him. I told you guys in my last podcast I wasn't that high with him. I thought he would be a above average fantasy producer. You could start him as your QB1. He'll get your 20 points, but he's starting to prove me wrong here. I mean, I think the way they use him in the run game could separate him. I mean, he had a 30-point week here against a good New Orleans defense. So yeah, if you guys, Jalen Hurts is slowly winning me over. Miles Sanders was back off of his injury. He got fed. He had 94 total yards on the ground. He did fumble the ball, which limited his day a little bit. And he will be getting more work with Jordan Howard leaving the game with a knee injury. And of course, I'd love to see Miles Sanders get utilized more in the receiving game. Screen game, short passes, get him out in space and make people miss. I think if he starts getting that level of volume, we could start to view him more as a solid running back one, as opposed to a kind of a boomer bust flaky running back two. Speaking of boomer bust, Devontae Smith seems to be of this mold. He's coming off 2 monster games, and then this week underwhelmed. So we'll see. I think this is just more of a testament of this being his rookie season and him still finding himself. Hopefully he could gain some consistency as he gains experience in this league. And that offense solidifies too. New coaching staff, new offense. It takes some time for these things to settle down. But from a route running and talent perspective, Devontae Smith is doing a great job. So if you have him on your team, good luck trying to predict when he's going to go off. I don't know if he's quite at the point where you're going to throw him in your lineup every week, regardless of matchups. So on the flip side, I mentioned in my last podcast, Trevor Siemian is a sneaky good streamer. He did end up being a sneaky good streamer. I think he put up 22 fantasy points. So can't ask for too much more if you scraping the bottom of the QB waiver barrel there and trying to get somebody for free or cheap. He threw some picks early in the game. He made up for it in garbage time. The other Saints worth mentioning is Mark Ingram. Looks like Kamara is going to be out again. I don't believe. I think I saw a report today that he wouldn't have practiced today. I think they took the day off, but he wouldn't have practiced today. If they did practice, not a good sign. So keep an eye on Kamara's status. If he's out again, then Mark Ingram is a solid running back too for you. And yeah, that's about it from New Orleans. Going on to the next game here is Miami at the Jets. This played out as I expected, but the Jets did a little bit better than I thought. Joe Flacco looked pretty good. At the QB position, he managed the game well enough to feed Elijah Moore, who I've been telling you guys about. He's been on the waiver list for, I think, my past 2 or 3 lists. So hopefully you guys listened to me. He was also on my sleeper list pre-draft. So he was one of my late round stash guys. But if you didn't spend a late round pick on him, hopefully you were able to get him off of waivers sometime over the past month, like I've been telling you guys. And he finally balled out and had a monster game, 20+ point game, I think his first one. And so we start to see this young kid breaking out here. And I just talked about Devontae Smith. There's some really solid young rookie receivers to keep an eye on, maybe if you're in a keeper league or a dynasty league. But it's looking like we have Jamar Chase is the clear best. And then if you're really looking at like who's the second, third, and fourth best rookie receiver, you got guys like Moore, Kadarius Toney, Devontae Smith, Rashad Bateman. I would say, I don't know if that's the right order, but I think you can make a case for Elijah Moore to be the second best rookie receiver of this class. Personally, I think it's more Kadarius Toney. We'll talk about him a little bit later, but so top 3 rookie receiver in Elijah Moore. The sky's the limit for a guy with this level of talent. Hopefully that situation in New York improves, where the quarterback situation solidifies a little bit. You guys know I'm not a big Zach Wilson believer, so even if they bring in a veteran, a stabilizing veteran like Flacco, to manage games and just deliver the ball accurately underneath to Elijah Moore, he could be a solid every week start for you. So hopefully you're able to stash him and at least for now play matchups and kind of think of him as a flex guy. But next season, the sky's the limit. On the Miami side, I called out Tua as a solid streamer this week against the Jets. I was right about that. I actually streamed him myself. He gave me 22. He did throw a pick, which was kind of a bummer. Without that, he would have had I think a really solid day. I also told you guys to start Jalen Waddle, who found the end zone actually on a running play, which kind of salvaged his day. And then Myles Gaskin had a big day. One thing I observed was they were using the Wildcat with Gaskin kind of at that quarterback position, taking the snaps inside the 10-yard line quite often. So it was a little frustrating for me to see as a Tua streamer for him not to get the ball in the scoring area. But Gaskin was able to make some things happen. And I think that Waddle touchdown was on a Wildcat play where Gaskin got the ball and handed it off on kind of a jet sweep looking thing to Jalen Waddle. So just wanted to call that out. I think these Miami players, you want to really pick and choose your matchups. I don't know if any of them are every week starters. Waddle might be developing into that, but that's about it. All right, next game, Washington at Carolina. So Cam Newton, I talked in my last podcast about wanting to see more from him before I threw him in a lineup or used a waiver pick on him. I must say he is being used really, really well. I talked about this last podcast that he has some limitations to his game, but are you able to design an offense to his strengths and that kind of diminish his weaknesses? And that's what I observed. That's what I saw Carolina doing. A lot of short to mid passes underneath that don't require a lot of touch on the ball, a lot of screens and dump offs, getting those balls to CMC and DJ Moore underneath, letting them do their thing and make guys miss, and not forcing Cam to sit back there and throw, touch passes over the shoulder into, dropping it in anyone's bucket there. That's not what he can do. So they're getting him moving. They're moving the pocket. They're rolling him out. They're doing some things that he can do quite well. So I think it's promising. I think if you want to potentially add Cam Newton here as a rest of season kind of flyer, see how it goes, I think that's not a bad idea. we'll talk about that in a little bit here when we get to our waiver wire picks. Besides Cam, CMC is a stud. He had some pretty athletic moves he made during this game. Just watch that injury bug with him. I wouldn't blame you for trying to sell high on him. I really wouldn't. So see what you could get. But if you could get a haul for him, it might not be a bad idea. If you could get some guys that are a little bit more solidified and don't have that injury history, or maybe your team's struggling because your first overall pick has been out for so many weeks, you could sell him for some draft picks or something next season if you're in a keeper or dynasty. DJ Moore did enough to have a day, salvage his day, not lose you a week. And then on the flip side, Washington. So this was probably my biggest miss of the week, was on Terry McLaurin. He probably heard me doubting him and criticizing him, so of course he had to ball out and prove me wrong, so you're welcome for that. But I'll still poke the bear here. I mean, we've seen him blow up and have 20-point weeks. I think this is his third one. But watch him disappear now for the next 2 weeks. I hope that doesn't happen, but that's been his kind of model here, is he'll blow up, disappear for 2 or 3 weeks, and then blow up again. So if you want to ride those mountains and valleys, like, be my guest, but I would try to sell him now after this pop-off week, because he's hard to trust week to week. I mean, if you drafted him to be a wide receiver 1 or 2, and you're either going to get 7 points or 20 points, 2/3 of the time you're going to get 7. I don't know if that's really worth it. So again, maybe another sell high candidate there. This Washington backfield is a committee quagmire. I think if you merged Gibson and McKissick into one back, they would be a nice running back 1 for you, but neither are startable in my opinion. Maybe at the flex position if you're in a pinch. It also depends on matchups, but like we saw in this game, any game that's close, you're going to get them to split time. I think the best case scenario is when it's going to be either a positive or negative game script. If you know they're going to get a lead and try to hold that lead throughout the game, then Gibson's your guy. If you know they're going to be behind and have to throw most of the game, then McKissick's your guy. It's in games like this where it's back and forth, they're trying to catch up, where they're going to split, and it's going to be almost a 50-50 split. And so who do you start then? Neither, I guess, is the best answer. So I actually have some stock in this backfield, and I'm trying to move them. And then Taylor Heineke, he had a great game. I think people have to take him a bit more seriously as a streaming option. And he's going to consistently find himself in negative game scripts due to this bad defense. So there's just streaming value going forward, just due to the volume he's going to see. Their defense is not going to be able to help them hold leads, so they're going to have to continue to throw the ball and push the ball to have a chance to win games. So Heineke is a volume play. Pick your matchups. He could be a solid streamer for you in the next few weeks here. All right, next game, Indianapolis at Buffalo. This was a bit of a shocker. I think everybody, including myself, or most people, including myself, had Buffalo winning this game. It did not go as planned. Indianapolis caught a lead early and didn't hold up here. So, Buffalo, I think, is in trouble because they lack a run game. And especially in this game where that game script flipped on them quickly, they become one-dimensional, just too fast, and they can't make defenses respect that run and get them creeping forward at all. So they just load up against the pass rush, send guys deep, and it kind of forces Josh Allen to regress into this chuck it and pray type of gunslinger that we saw much earlier in his career. And he needs to kind of settle back down, try not to make too much happen, let the offense come to him, take what the defense is giving you, all these cliches, as opposed to playing hero ball. But when they're down and they can't run the ball, this is what it forces him to become. And it gets him in trouble, and we saw that. So Indy is red hot, right? Jonathan Taylor is the best running back in the league. What I love about this offense is they're going to line up and run the ball against you, and there's nothing you can do about it. This offensive line is that good. This running game is that good. So they're going to line up the ball and run it against you. Jonathan Taylor's going to pop off, and they're going to catch a lead early, and good luck trying to catch up. Carson Wentz is a game manager, and with this running game, he doesn't have to be anything more than that. I think when he is forced to become a hero, a gunslinger, a Mahomes, someone who's trying to win the game, and right when if that negative game script happens where they are forced to throw to catch up and win, that's when Wentz is going to fail. But if he could just be a game manager, convert some key third downs, and lean on that run game and defense, that's what is ultimately going to see him succeed. So Wentz is not really a big fantasy quarterback, but he is this great game manager type, and they're putting him in that situation where that's what he can be. And so you're seeing them win games because of it. And then this defense in Indianapolis, I think they have a pretty solid front seven. I think their bigger question marks are in the secondary. But if they make teams one-dimensional by getting out to an early lead and being able to grind things out on offense, now all of a sudden that helps this defense out tremendously, where the opposing offense becomes one-dimensional, and it helps this defense focus on the pass and not have to make too many decisions. All right, so next game, Detroit at Cleveland. This was a bit of a snooze fest, but kind of as expected, a low-scoring game. Banged up Baker Mayfield, Tim Boyle in for Detroit at quarterback. Let's see, Nick Chubb found the end zone. It wasn't quite as big of a day for him and Dearness Johnson as I thought, but he did enough to salvage his day. Really not much else. Baker Mayfield was clearly injured and bothered and hindered by these injuries. And that Detroit offense, of course, with Tim Boyle behind the helm, didn't really force Cleveland to have to push the ball or pass the ball. They could kind of keep things conservative and keep things on the ground. Credit to Detroit. They fought really hard. They played much better defense than I think we've seen. And the Lions need Goff back. As not great as Goff is, Tim Boyle is that much worse. And so for them to get their first win, I really think they need Goff, and it's really a shame. I think they have a chance to potentially beat the Bears on Thanksgiving. That's kind of a sweet matchup for them to get their first win on national TV on a holiday. But if Tim Boyle's back there, man, good luck. And then I just want to call out DeAndre Swift. Talked about him a little bit in the last podcast, how we all shouldn't have been as low as we were on him. I'll go out and be as bold as saying he's a top 3 running back talent. Yes, top 3 running back talent, DeAndre Swift. If you look at his vision, his tangibles, the way he makes cuts happen, his speed, his athleticism, he is elite. And he might not be in the best situation to put up fantasy points at the moment, but that situation has seemed to improve. We see him bust big play after big play, turn nothing into something. So you heard it here. DeAndre Swift is a top 3 running back talent. All right, next game, San Francisco at Jacksonville. This one, again, was a bit of a snooze fest. I think this was like one of the fastest games, not just of the season, but in a long time. This game was going to halftime when second quarters were just starting at this early game window, because it played out as expected. San Fran kept it on the ground. Jacksonville offense was inept enough where San Fran didn't have to do much more than that. San Fran spread the ball around. We saw Kittle find the end zone. Debo was again the shining star, and he balled out, found the end zone. Ayuk found the end zone to salvage his day. And then on the Jacksonville side, again, they couldn't do much early, but then in garbage time, Robinson found the end zone, and Dan Arnold found the end zone as well. I've been telling you guys he's a solid tight end play that you could get for cheap or for free. He should be on my waiver ads list again, probably second or third week in a row. So if you're looking for tight end help, you can do much worse than Dan Arnold. All right, next game was the shocker of the week here, Houston at Tennessee, major upset. Weather did play a role. So Houston, loaded up against the run against Tennessee, forced them to throw. And then, of course, the sloppy weather kind of helped that Houston pass defense. Tannehill still had his yards, 320 plus yards, but with the 4 picks. A.J. Brown caught a chest injury. Left the game. Initial x-rays were negative, but they're doing another round of x-rays and probably MRIs and other, imaging procedures, and we'll see what comes out of that. But it seems like major injury is going to be avoided for A.J. Brown. So I warned folks against A.J. Brown. I know his injury record. He's probably the top receiver that has the best chance of leaving a game due to injury at this point. That's kind of the trend I've been seeing. So I'd say next time Brown pops off, try to trade him. And then on the Houston side, I'm not really sure there's any major fantasy options here on this offense. I think we'll talk about them a little later. They're playing the Jets this coming week, so there's potentially some streaming options there. But outside of streaming, maybe Tyrod Taylor, there's really not much there. They did waive Phillip Lindsay, so look at David Johnson and Rex Burkhead to get a bit of a bump here if you're really hurting for running backs. And then Brandon Cooks, somebody I talked up a little bit last week. I thought he would get a little bit more work, but he can't be trusted. His kind of early season success, I don't think applies anymore to his situation. And so, start at your own risk here. I think he's going to be boom or bust for you. We saw a nice rookie that I talked about, Nico Collins, I think finally getting some game action here this week. So keep an eye on him. Just, me, I love my rookies and I love to scout players, and he's a freakish combo of size and speed. So Nico Collins, remember the name, you heard it here first. Just keep an eye on him. Again, if you're in keeper or dynasty leagues especially, but just put him on your radar now, even for next season. And look for him in games and see how he looks, see if he passes your eye test. I know I'll be paying attention. Next game was Green Bay at Minnesota. This was probably my favorite game of the weekend. I thought this was, two of the best kind of buttoned up teams, just going back and forth, trading, huge body blow and power punch, one after another, back and forth. Points all around as I predicted. I told you Thielen would get back in the end zone this week, which he did. Cousins, Jefferson, Dalvin Cook all balled out. Rodgers and Adams balled out. So all as expected. So these are two elite teams. Minnesota I think is better than their record suggests. I think they're figuring out some things on defense. This offense seems to be clicking. And so Minnesota is one of those weird teams. They could always just disappear on you one week. But I think you have to start these guys I mentioned on Minnesota week to week. And then on the Packers side, the last guy to mention here is A.J. Dillon. I pumped him up. He was kind of my start of the week here for starts and sits. He underwhelmed based on how much I was really championing him. But he still had a good day. I think he gave about 12 points in my leagues. Still underwhelmed, but didn't cost you a week, I don't think. So still a good start. Next game, Baltimore at Chicago. This was ugly as I predicted. No Lamar Jackson. Both teams coming off of a bye. Baltimore defense, again, this was a wait and see, kind of watch and learn game for me. Like I mentioned, I wanted to see how this Baltimore D was going to come out. And same with the Chicago team, particularly this offense, how they were going to come out of their bye. And I think the point the epiphany that I had here, let's say, is that well-coached teams are going to come off the bye looking great, and we saw this with Baltimore and the Baltimore defense. And on the flip side, poorly coached teams are going to come off their bye looking sloppy, and we saw this with Chicago, primarily that Chicago offense. So my big 2 question marks here going in this game were answered, and I think it has a lot to do with how these teams are coached. On the Chicago side, it was all Darnell Mooney. He was on my preseason sleeper list, so hopefully you guys paid attention to that and were able to snag him late in your drafts or on the waiver wire. I think he led the NFL in targets this week, so good for you, Darnell Mooney. Keep doing your thing. And then on the Baltimore side, it was really Devontae Freeman who balled out and was the fantasy hero on Baltimore. He's been on my waiver ad list for a few times over the past few weeks, mainly with Latavius Murray banged up. You're going to see they're going to have a hot hand approach, but right now it seems like Freeman is that hot hand and that guy who's going to get the first shot in the game to show that he still has that hot hand. All right, next, Cincinnati at Las Vegas, not Oakland. This was not the shootout that I predicted it to be. It was a bit of an ugly game, bit of a defensive game. That Raiders pass rush is for real, and we even saw some healthy pass rush from Cincinnati throughout the game too. Burrow busted. Sorry about that. Jamar Chase did okay. Higgins busted. Mixon was the hero of the bunch. And then on the Las Vegas side, Renfro and Carr busted. Jacobs had an okay day. And then Waller balled out 7 for 116. And I just can't help but notice that since the John Gruden firing, Las Vegas has just been on a decline. And I think that trend is going to continue. I think you're going to see a nice, slow, steady decline with this team, this offense. So really, temper your expectations for your Raiders here going forward. There was, Carr was kind of head and shoulders above the rest of the quarterbacks in terms of passing yards earlier in the year, and that feels like ancient history at this point watching them play. So, Gruden, good or bad, love him or hate him, he had this offense humming much better than they are now. All right. Next game, Arizona at Seattle. This one panned out as expected. Cards got a lead and didn't look back, with or without Kyler and D-Hop. James Conner scored again, like I thought. And besides that, it really was the Zach Ertz show. I think he had 3 touchdowns. So that one, not that I thought he would bust by any means, but slipped under my radar. I should have called him out as a bigger sleeper or streamer. For this week, I actually had to stream a tight end and missed out on Ertz. I rolled the dice on Uzama and it was a bust, but I was in a position after having a great Thursday night kicker and defense performance where I could take the risk. So Seattle is in trouble. I called this out in my last podcast. They kind of need a complete rebuild, I think, here. Tear it down, build it back, trade Russ. Russ was bad. That offensive line was bad. I think Lockett had an okay day. Was able to do some things in garbage time. There's an ugly committee there at running back I would stay away from. Carson is out for the year, so it looks like they're splitting time between DJ Dallas, Alex Collins, and Rashad Penny. So stay away. And looks like DK Metcalf has become a bit more boom and bust lately. Even with this bad Seattle defense and that offense being forced to be one-dimensional and having them let Russ cook. It still seems like Metcalf is not a consistent producer, especially taking into consideration where you drafted him. So fading the Seahawks at this point in the year. Trade Lockett if you can, get some value after he had a decent week. Other than that, there's not much on this team you want a part of. All right, next, Dallas at Kansas City. Thought this would be a higher scoring game, so I thought this would be a potential shootout. It was a good game, but it was not high scoring. Kansas City defense really stepped up. Dallas defense, this was the one aspect of these teams in this game that I wanted to look at, and the defense was not there. I mean, your guess is as good as mine on what defense is going to show up for Dallas week to week. So take that into consideration when you're trying to predict outcomes in games, and when you're trying to predict game scripts for Dallas. Dak wasn't great. Zeke was okay. Left the game with a knee or lower leg injury, and we saw Tony Pollard break off some chunks after that. Monitor this Zeke situation going forward. If he does miss time, I really do like Pollard. And then on the Kansas City side, Mahomes had a good day. Tyreek Hill had a good day. Actually, Mahomes kind of busted. I take that back. Hill was able to get things underneath. Kelsey was a bit of a bust. And then, CEH had his return and looked pretty good. But again, it was this ugly committee. We saw Darrell Williams come in as well throughout the game. So, moving forward, I think, we also saw for Dallas. So moving forward for Dallas, we saw CeeDee Lamb leave the game with a concussion. So CeeDee Lamb, potential injury, Zeke Elliott, potential injury. So we'll talk a little bit later about how to handle that. And then Kansas City, I mean, it's hard to not start your Chiefs. If you're a Mahomes, Hill, or Kelsey owner, you got to fire them up. If you're a CEH or D-Will owner, I don't think I think the days of D-Will winning you weeks are over. So, CEH's return really limits him, but I don't think CEH is a guy you're going to want to throw in your lineup every week. He's going to be kind of hard to trust. So, ugly committee there that I would stay away from in terms of Chiefs running backs. All right. Next game was the Sunday night game, Pittsburgh at LA Chargers, and this was a fantastic game. This is probably most people's favorite game of the week. I was actually at one point kind of getting away from Pittsburgh and looking like a blowout. I actually almost turned off the game to watch some Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I'm glad I didn't. And so points all over, especially on that LA side. Justin Herbert, these Chargers might have heard me say Herbert needs to get back to doing Herbert things, particularly pushing the ball downfield to Mike Williams. And this is exactly what happened, and they put up, 40-plus points. So Mike Williams, 8 deep. Keenan Allen ate up everything that defense gave them underneath. Eckler, I mean, this was just as much Eckler's game as it was Herbert's. He scored 4 touchdowns. On heavy utilization in the passing game, I think he had 6 catches. So just monster game for Eckler. I always warn people and the Chargers if they're watching to limit Eckler's usage. I still don't believe he's a workhorse back. I still think he's going to break down if you treat him like a workhorse. So after a big monster game, huge AFC win like this, I want to see Larry Roundtree and Joshua Kelly in the mix next game. And then, of course, bring out Eckler on 3rd down and let him do what he does best. But you need to keep him balanced or you're going to wear him out. And so let him give you 30, 35 points, and then following week, let him give you 15. Right, that's not that. It's better than having him go out for a few weeks. So, that's the deal and my take on Eckler. For Pittsburgh, TJ Watt was out, so that might have contributed to their defensive struggles and kind of the reason their defense perhaps let Herbert and others do what they wanted to do. But I think the big takeaway is Pittsburgh was able to keep up with this LA offense. So a big day for Deontay Johnson. Big Ben turned out to be a solid stream. Pat Freiermuth found the end day. Najee Harris found the end zone to salvage his day. He actually missed a few series, Najee, during this game with a potential concussion, so he was in protocol and getting testing. But he ended up going back in the game, which is a huge sign. I'm so happy he stayed healthy. I mean, he's been a superstar for me on my teams, and so glad to be able to keep cheering for him and have him in my lineup week to week. And then the last game here, the Giants at the Bucks. Not much to talk about here. This went exactly as expected. It was going to be an embarrassment for the Giants on a national scale. The one silver lining here for Giants fans is Jason Garrett got fired today, finally. So hopefully we get to see some new, fresh air, some new innovation into this offense, because we saw some of the skill players, particularly Kadarius Toney and Saquon Barkley, like these guys are there. John Ross, another guy with some explosion in his legs, and so we're able to see that the Giants have some offensive firepower if it's just utilized correctly. But again, we're really diving deep to try to find some silver linings here for the Giants. Other than that, on the flip side, the Bucks, that defense looked great. It's easy for a defense to look great against the Giants, but and then on their offensive side, it was Brady, Godwin, Gronk, Evans, like all the usual suspects there. They all ate. I think all of them. I don't know if Gronk scored. I think he did, but I think all of them found the end zone. I know Godwin and Evans did. So I didn't really learn much of anything new about this game or about these teams. But hopefully some brighter futures ahead for the Giants here with a new offensive coordinator, or at least with Freddie Kitchens taking over. All right, so that was that for our weekly recap. And now we'll just talk about some of the waiver wire picks. You'll see my official list drop on Instagram and on the website, NFLFantasyFlex.com, here in the next probably right around the time this podcast drops. So keep an eye out for that. And I'll just talk through some of my picks here at quarterback. Cam Newton, I think, is a rest of season addition to your team, could be good here. And again, with these waivers, I'm trying to focus on players that are available in more than half of leagues. So just take that into consideration too. There might be better options that perhaps are available in your league, but not in most of others. So Cam Newton, rest of season, kind of a good flyer here. Good dice roll to take, especially if you're in the need of a quarterback or if your quarterback has a bye coming up. Other than that, a couple streamers for next week. We have Tyrod Taylor against the Jets. We saw him put up an okay week. I think he had about 18 points in my league here against Tennessee. Jets defense significantly worse, so potentially a sweet spot here for Tyrod. And then Taylor Heineke against the Seattle Seahawks, another potential good streamer here. Two bad defenses, two not great offenses. So maybe an ugly, high-scoring affair here with Washington and Seattle. Good for Heineke. At running back, Devontae Freeman, I think, is the clear-cut add here. We'll see how things go with Latavius Murray potentially getting healthier. But I think he's the guy to add. And then some guys to look at. The Jets situation, Michael Carter went down with a multi-week knee. So guys like Ty Johnson or Tevin Coleman. Coleman is who kind of took over for him in the middle of the previous game, so maybe he has the slight lead in terms of taking over this position. But give those guys a look. And then again on Houston, Rex Burkhead or David Johnson could be decent streams against the Jets if you're in a pinch. At wide receiver, Elijah Moore makes this list again. I think this is third or fourth week in a row. So go add him, get him over 50% owned so I could take him off the list. We saw Jamison Crowder for the Jets find the end zone. I think with Flacco behind the helm, he could find Crowder underneath, and especially in PPR, could be a good add for you. Next, we want to talk about a couple of Cowboys. So CeeDee Lamb is in concussion protocol if he can't go. And then also Amari Cooper was out with COVID last week. So if, again, he can't play again, then you got to look at Cedric Wilson and Michael Gallup. So monitor the two starters, Lamb and Cooper. If one or both of them miss time, then take a look at Wilson and Gallup as a stream, as a short-term plug-in. If you're just, again, if you're at a pinch for wide receiver or flex. And then some other receivers are some New England Patriots facing a Tennessee team or Tennessee defense that it gives up the most points to opposing fantasy receivers. So Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers, if they're available, could be decent streams for you too if you need a wide receiver. I know for me personally, I have Tyreek Hill coming up on a bye, so I'm going to need to stream a receiver here, and I'm looking at heavily at some of these Patriots. And then at tight end, Dan Arnold, like I said, again, let's get him added in over 50% of leagues, so I could drop him off my list. But he had a touchdown. I think he scored 11 points. He gets a ton of targets. He's got a solid floor, maybe not the highest ceiling in the world, but for a free tight end, you could do a lot worse. And then another guy to put back on your radar is Logan Thomas. He's been out with a hamstring, I believe, for several weeks now. I think he can return from IR at any time. I think he's returned to practice, so he has that 21-day window to return back to games. So you might want to stash him ahead of his return here as a potential tight end option. So that's what I got for you. Thanks again for listening, guys. I'll post my my week 12 rankings here coming up. I'm also going to do a bonus podcast this week, which is a Thanksgiving preview. And then, keep an eye out for my full preview later in the week, that podcast. And then my starts and sits list, which I might adjust. I think I'm going to go more love and hate versus start and sit. I think that it's just a better way of thinking about these kind of fringe players and who you expect to pop off and who you expect to bust. So potential change there, but give me a follow on Instagram at NFL.flex. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.